Alright guys, welcome to another Adobe Illustrator variable data tutorial. My name is John Garrett, and you probably remember that I did another tutorial maybe a year ago on how to do this variable data and make it a little bit easier, and this time I'm back with another way that is even easier than that. So what we're going to do is walk through this. I'm going to walk through the basics, and there's going to be a little bit more detailed write-up at my site and also links to other resources. The basics here is we're going to be using a script that's called Variable Importer. It was written by a man named Vasily Hall, and he contacted me based on my other tutorial and asked me if I would take a look at this script. And immediately I thought I better do a tutorial on this just to get the word out on this, because it really does save a lot of work. Some of the things that you can do with this script, it will allow you to find the path to your images through the GUI instead of putting that path in yourself. It generates the XML automatically. You no longer have to make an XML file. You can just use a regular CSV just like InDesign, and it will make the XML for you. Variables can be auto bound to their objects, so you don't have to then click on them and then click the variables palette and then bind them. And you can also customize the dataset names at import time, so you don't have to keep that first column in your CSV as a dataset name. So what I'm going to do in this one is just walk through the basics, and then I'm going to have another video later on that will show you how to do multiple records up on a sheet. I wanted to do it all in one video, but I think it would take too long. So I just want to show you this right now. So the first thing we got to do, if we look at this file, you probably remember this supercards file from the last tutorial. So I just want to show you the same exact data, but we're going to do it a different way. So first we got to get that script, and that lives at GitHub, at Vasily's GitHub home, and I'll put the link to my site in the description of this YouTube, and you can get the link from that write-up, from that text write-up. But if you're not familiar with GitHub, what you got to do is you don't want to right-click and then try to save link as, because that will introduce errors, and I kept doing that, and it was screwing up the whole thing. What you have to do is click on it, and when you get into its own page, you have to click the raw button. So that's just going to dump the raw text of the script into your browser, at which point you can just do a file save. And I'll just save it here for now, but where you have to save it, where you have to put that file so that Illustrator recognizes it, is into the scripts folder. I'm using Illustrator CS6 for this tutorial, so you need to put it inside the CS6 folder, presets, then your language folder. Yours might say NGB, mine is NUS, but inside that folder will be a scripts folder. And as you can see, I've put it here already. So you have to put it there, then restart Illustrator so it can recognize it. Once you have done that, File Scripts will show you that script, and you can run it from there. But before we do that, I just want to show a couple things. Here is my image, and over here in the Layers palette, if you're not familiar with working with things on the object level in the Layers palette, you might be used to just seeing your layers, but inside here, if you click this disclosure triangle, these are your objects. And the point of this is, if the object is named the same as my variable, the script will auto bind those for me. So, and you can just click in here and change these. So what you need to do, or what I've done here, is, okay, I've got name, you can see that's it. It's called name. This one is number, team name, and publisher. So I took care at first. You don't have to do this, but I just wanted to show this little feature to you, and it will be very important in the multiple data tutorial I'm going to do. So I've got those named. Let's jump over to the CSV, and as you can see, my data is very plain here, just a few columns. Up here is my variables, which, if you remember, those are the exact same names as my objects. So if these match, all the data is just going to bind automatically. Of course, here I have an @ symbol, and this is the script. This is how the script will recognize that this column contains image data. So make sure you throw that @ sign in front of whatever. You don't have to name it image. You can name it pictures, photos, whatever you name it, that @ symbol needs to be there. Aside from that, there's not much else noteworthy. Here I have an underscore in between team and name. Make sure there's no spaces or special characters. You can name these whatever you want. It really doesn't matter what the name itself is, as long as they don't have special characters, as long as your images have image variables have an @ sign in front of them. So before, you might remember that we used to have a column over here called datasets. Well, I don't need to do that now because the script itself will allow me to set the dataset names at import time. So that's even more work that's taken off the plate. And there's really not much to be done with this file after that. It's very, very simple. So as you can see, I have a CSV. If you're working in Excel or have an XLS file or something, you need to do a save as, and just make sure you save it as text CSV. And once you do that, you'll be ready to import that data. So let's jump back over. All right, so what I'm going to do, you can see there's no variables here. There's no variables. I have this placeholder TIFF, and I've made sure that this is linked. Your images have to be linked. They can't be embedded. If you don't see this X through it, it is not linked. So what you'd have to do in that case is go back, place again, and make sure that this link button is checked when you bring in the file again. So otherwise you will get an error, and you'll be wondering, okay, what the heck happened? All right, so what we're going to do now is run this script and run through it and see how it works. Let's do variable importer. First, it's going to ask me for my CSV, which is fine. Here it is. And once it gets that, it's going to show me this window. And there's a lot of features in here, but I'm only going to show you some of the basics you're going to need and direct you to some resources on the rest of them in my write-up. So anyway, here is my columns, and you can quickly run through and see if all of your variables came in correctly. Like before, I had a space in here, and instead of bringing in team name, it just dumped variable 3 in here because it didn't understand that. So make sure that you don't have any spaces. Now down here, here's my image. Since I put the @ symbol in front of that image variable, there is my, it's telling me this is an image icon. It knows those are images. Notice the @ symbol doesn't show up here. We only need it to denote that that's what it is. And here's the other killer feature here. Instead of going and searching for that file path, I can just click this button and tell it, hey, I need to find my images. Here's my folder, open, and it dumps that path right in there for me. So sweet. I don't have to go digging around and try to figure out the proper syntax for the image folder. And that's a huge load off everybody's mind right there. All right, data sets. Remember, I'm not using that first column as the data set name anymore. Here, I'm going to assign my data set names. And actually, a lot of the times I actually don't do this, but this matters if you really have stringent requirements of what the exported files need to be named. I could even go in here and say, okay, use variable 1 value, which would be name, and down here it will tell me this is what's happening. This is how the preview of what your records are going to look like. So I'll actually tell it to have a dash in there too. And increment, this is on by default because some of you may know this, some of you don't, but the dataset names all have to be unique. So if you were doing business cards and you had Thompson and Thompson, Jake Thompson and Ryan Thompson, well, the dataset would error out if you did not have an increment on it, assuming you decided to use their names. That wouldn't work. So what you need to do is just always make sure you have this increment on. It'll save time later. And actually, there's a warning now in there because I did tell Vasily that I was working with a couple people who turned this increment off, and then the data set would not import, and they were saying the script didn't work, but it definitely works. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave this as variable 1 value, which will be my name, a dash, and an increment number. Okay, so that's done. Down here you have the option to keep the XML file if you need to. I don't. Some people, it could come in handy to just store that, and then you could import that somewhere else or do it later. Now down here is our auto binding, what I've been talking about. This is why these are named, these objects are named the way they are. So we're going to go down here and tell it to bind by name. Now there's other options. Bind by note, you set notes in the attributes panel or palette. I don't normally use that. So tags I don't think are accessible by the GUI. I don't think they're accessible unless you're a scripter anyway. I could be wrong about that, but I never use tags, so I don't worry about that. I'm going to say bind by name. All right, really that's all you need to worry about at this point. If you had more than one image, you could click this hamburger icon up here, right? Click this, and you could then choose the path for all your image variables. Like if you had 10 image variables, it would get annoying very quickly to have to go to each one and then put that path in there. So this is a quick way to just dump the same path into every variable. Also, here's that warning I was talking about. It's set to display if anyone removes the increment. You know, some people who know what they're doing, hey, they might want to do that and just ignore that part. You can also save whatever your settings are. You can save those as a preset, which will help a lot of people. If you're doing the same type of file over and over again and you just need to start with the same general data, you could just load up that preset and then maybe make a few tweaks and move on. Down here, if you want to share how great this is, which you probably should, go ahead and tweet that out. And here's a couple other resources. Prepression is going to have a great, Stephen of Prepression has an excellent tutorial on every feature of this thing. I mean, you can't miss that one. So the link is right in here, or you can get it off my site. And of course, there's my site. But anyway, to get out of here, click this button again. All we're going to do now is click OK. And we'll get this, and it'll say, hey, I've imported 5 variable names and 30 records. Now that's looking good to me. Click OK. All right, so once that's done, here's our variables popping up in the variables panel. So that's all good. It doesn't look like anything's changed yet, and that's because it never selects the first data set for you, which is fine. You have to choose the first one, and there we go. And we can see it has successfully changed all these variables. And look at how it bound them because I had these named correctly. It just knew automatically, hey, this one goes to this team name goes to team name goes to name. That's even less work I had to do. Now, what we have to do, of course, now is export these all out as separate EPS files. So obviously you're going to need to print these or do whatever you need to do. And the only way to do that is to set up an action and then run that action as a batch. So what we're going to do first, I'm going to create a new action, and I will just call it save as EPS. And it's saving my variable set. You can save it wherever. And I'm going to record. So now it's recording, as we can see in the panel here. So I'm just going to do a save as copy. It's important to do a save as copy because last time we saw that just doing a save as will not allow the extension of the file to be added. For some reason, it'll just save without the extension. But many people noticed afterwards, and even I did myself after my last tutorial, that saving as copy, it allows it to keep the extension. And that's important assuming you're going to a RIP or something. Sometimes it doesn't matter, but I work with a couple RIPs and they won't even see the file if there's no extension. So just do that and don't change anything up here. If you change the name in any way, then it will still delete the extension. So just go ahead and save. And I'll just keep these options the same here. My EPS options, click OK. So it's going to save that out. And now I'm going to stop the action. Okay, so now it's done. All it's doing is saving as copy. All right, so that file that you just saved, you probably won't need. You can just delete it later. What we're going to do now that we've made that action, we need to run that action in a batch, which we can go to this flyout menu on the actions panel, all the way down to batch. Let's bring this stuff over. All right, so here's my action. I had it selected anyway, so it selected it for me. My source is data sets. Okay, so all my data sets, it's just going to flip through all these one at a time and save them. And I'm going to choose my folder, which was already chosen for me. Okay, and here's where our dataset names came in handy, because now these are going to be named with the name of the dataset, so it's a little bit easier to tell which file is which. You don't have to do this, of course. You can do whatever you want, file number or file and dataset name, but whatever works for you. At this point, it's going to run through and go one at a time and export these, and I'll just show you what it looks like. I probably won't let it do all of them. I'll probably skip, but just so you can see. Okay, now this isn't like super quick, but it's still better than doing them one at a time yourself and aggravating your carpal tunnel or something. So you can expect, if you've got 300 of these or 500, blah blah blah, then maybe you're going to go ahead and just go do something else for a while, or let it run in the background and be done with it. But I just stopped it there. So we don't need to see 30 of these come out. So really at that point, you're all done. That's how easy it is. That's exactly how easy it is. And if you look in Bridge, now I've got a few of these that came out. Here was that first one that I actually saved to make the action, so that's not really necessary. But there's all my separate files. It really doesn't get any easier than that. What I would do if I were you guys is quick jump over to my site, or use the pre-pression button that you saw in the variable importer script. I'd like you to read the Stephen Marsh tutorial. He goes through every single feature on there, and you'll really want to check that out. This is really going to help your workflow. And if Vasily actually is open for more scripting, if you need scripting or automation or know somebody, you really should check him out and give him a holler, because I've already asked him to do another script for me, frankly. But yeah, it saves a lot of time. This is really something that probably should have been in there in the first place. So Adobe should probably go ahead and license this or something. I don't know the intricacies of doing something like that, but they should just go ahead and license that and put it in there. It works for me. And what I'm going to do is wrap this up, and then in the next couple of days, I'm going to do a tutorial on doing multiple records up on a sheet, similar to how InDesign does it. It's not exactly the same, but it's a quick way. Like if you need 30 things up on a sheet and they all need to be their own variable, I've found a kind of a fairly quick way to do that. It's better than doing it by hand. But if you want to keep on the lookout for that, go ahead and subscribe or keep checking back. And aside from that, I'm out of here. Let me know of any questions you have in the comments. Comment on my site, comment on YouTube, hit me up on Twitter. Anyway, I'm out of here, and hope you guys find this useful, and I'll see you guys next time.